Hey guys, it's Chris at Highline Guitars. You're watching another one of my YouTube guitar building videos. If you're new to the channel, welcome. I hope that by the end of this video, I'll have earned your subscription. Okay, so what I'm going to be talking about in today's video is part 14 of my electric violin build. And this is actually going to be the last video in this series. In future videos, I'm going to be moving on to another guitar build, which I will be explaining in a future video. But what I wanted to talk about specifically in this episode is what I learned while building this violin. Because I've always said, when you build a guitar or any stringed instrument, it's always good to sort of step outside of your box, veer into the other lane, so to speak, because you can learn things when you do different types of projects, which you can incorporate into what you normally do. So I like to occasionally build different kinds of instruments in order to improve my skills and abilities when it comes to building solid body electric guitars. And this project was no different. I learned quite a few things along the way, which I may be able to apply to building electric guitars. So the first thing that I learned with this project is that despite what people were saying, you definitely can make a humbucker pickup work with a violin. However, as I learned in making this pickup for this violin, there are certain design parameters that need to be addressed in order for it to work properly. And my initial attempt was partially successful, enough to encourage me to one day try it again, but to refine the design a little bit to make it work more efficiently. And the problem was, there were several actually. First of all, when the pole pieces are exposed like this on the pickup, when you play the violin, as you run the bow across the strings, there's the potential for rosin dust to fall off the bow and deposit onto the top of the pickup and get down inside between where the pole pieces are and this top cover, and thus muck up the inside of the pickup. And I think over time that would be an issue. So I think that if I was to do this again, I would make the pickup cover solid so that you wouldn't be able to see the pole pieces. Another thing I learned was using this type of pole piece isn't necessarily the most efficient because there's such a tight radius of the fingerboard and the strings that trying to mimic that radius on the pickup with this type of pole piece is a bit of a challenge. I think it would have been better to use two metal blades cut into that same radius at the top with a magnet running in between. And I think if I do this again, that's exactly what I would do. The other thing I learned was the shape of the pickup itself. When it's underneath the strings, it sort of gets in the way of when you play the violin. And it wasn't necessarily a deal breaker, but it does force you to change or modify whatever muscle memory you may have as a violinist, so that when you're running the bow over the strings, you're not hitting the sides of the pickup because they do sort of get in the way. Now, like I said, you can modify your muscle memory so that you can avoid that. But if you're a really expressive violinist, which many violinists are, that would kind of pose a problem. It's going to inhibit your ability to be expressive in your playing. So I think that I would have to design this pickup so that it doesn't stick up so high off the body and get in the way of when you play. Now, the other thing I learned related to the pickup and the electronics is that for at least the time being, the piezo style pickups are what work the best. And right now I have them mounted to the back, and there's three of them. They're both, or all three are attached right here to the back of the body, which I found worked the best. And several folks had mentioned, oh, you should just try one instead of three. Well, I did, and it didn't really make much difference in the tone. So what I found was with experimenting with the pickups, is that it's a lot like building a solid body electric guitar. We tend to, especially if you're a tone chaser, you tend to constantly modify, change, and upgrade your guitar in an effort to try to achieve the tone that you're after. A lot of times the guitar right out of the box doesn't quite meet your expectations. So you might end up changing magnets, changing pickups, changing the type of strings, doing all sorts of things in an effort to try to dial in the tone to be a little bit closer to what you're hoping for. And I think the same is true with this violin. Trying the humbucker as well as the piezos, I'm still trying to get that tone dialed in just right. And there are different brands of piezo type pickups, all sorts of different things that I could try in order to dial in the tone. And of course I can also adjust the EQ section on my amplifier. I could purchase a pedal that I could plug the violin into and make adjustments there to the tone. There's all sorts of things that can be done. That's kind of the beauty of this type of a project. It's like I said, it's a lot like when you buy a solid body electric guitar. Now, as far as the overall design of the violin, stepping away from the electronics, one thing I did learn was the way that I made the body by making the top and the bottom as two separate halves, hollowed out and then glued together, definitely works. And it's got me thinking about some possibilities for a future solid body electric guitar build. In fact, I may incorporate that into the next project. We'll see. I haven't gotten that far yet. But what I found was it's a very easy way to make a body, especially a body that's fairly thick. And you can do so using a much thinner piece of wood, since you're going to be cutting two separate pieces out of the same board and then gluing them together. The one thing I would do differently, however, is I would probably have carved out more of the inside than I did. The sides of this violin are about a ½ an inch thick, and the top is about a ¼ of an inch. And I think all the way around I could have reduced that in half of what I actually did. So the sides would be about a ¼ of an inch thick and the top would be about an 1/8 of an inch. That would have drastically reduced the weight of this violin, because right now as it stands, it's about 2.5 pounds, which is about 1.5 pounds heavier than it should be. And I attribute a lot of that to how thick I made the sides and the top of the body. But like I said, I think I could carve that to be much thinner and therefore much lighter. So that's something I may consider if I use this approach when making my next electric guitar project, if I decide to make the body that way. Now, as far as the headstock and tuners are concerned, you know, I really thought that using guitar tuners would make it easier and maybe more precise as far as tuning stability and all that is concerned. But because I had to make the headstock wider, like a guitar headstock, and I still like the way this is shaped. I really think it's pretty cool looking. And, you know, to reduce the weight, because this looks like it's going to be a really heavy piece, the inside of this scroll is hollowed out. I hollowed it out when I carved it on the CNC machine, because if you look closely, you can see that the neck is a two-piece neck. There's a left side and a right side, and they were glued together. And that allowed me to carve out the inside to make it hollow. However, the weight of the tuners is pretty significant compared to the weight of normal violin tuners. This was just a bit much, and it makes the violin, it's adding significantly to the weight. So I think if I was going to do this again, I would probably go more for a traditional violin headstock shape. If I were to keep this approach, which I still like, I still think it's pretty cool looking, I would just install the violin tuners differently, you know, but I'm getting kind of ahead of myself. I'd have to really sit down, look at it, and think it through and see if it would be something that would actually work. But I think using the guitar tuners was just a bit too heavy. So, but the rest of it, I really can't say there's anything else I would change in the design. I liked using this piece of Padauk for the fingerboard. I think it's cool looking. There's a nice contrast between the color of the Padauk and the mahogany of the body. I think it looks nice. And then I think it looks nice with the ebony of the chin rest and the tailpiece here. So I don't think there's really much else that I would do as far as that. Oh yeah, there is one thing with regard to the electronics. A viewer had mentioned that I could actually conceal the jack into the body by mounting it to the side using a curved Les Paul style jack plate. And that never even occurred to me, but he's right. I could, you know, mount the piezas to the back, drill a hole, run the wiring into the body, and then out the jack hole on the side, mount it to the jack, and then mount the jack to the Les Paul plate, and then attach that to the side. Then if I ever needed to do any service work on the jack itself, I could just remove the 4 screws that hold the plate on and pull it out and do whatever work that would need to be done. It'd be very simple to do. And so that's something that I could probably do on this as a modification, and something I may consider doing down the road. So who knows? But, you know, I think this was a fun project. I really enjoyed it. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to leave you with some still photos of the violin so you can see up close what it looks like completed. And in a future episode, I'm going to talk about my next guitar project. And what I'll do is I'll leave you with a little bit of a hint as to what that project is going to be. It's going to be a solid body electric guitar. It's going to have 6 strings, and it's going to have multi-scales. So be sure to check that out. So in the meantime, as always, be sure to give the video a thumbs up. Visit the Highline Guitars merch store. Visit eguitarplans.com. Make purchases there. That'll help support this channel and keep me making these videos. And then, you know, if you want, you can click that thanks button down below and leave a tip in the amount that you think is fair, and it would be much appreciated. So until the next episode, as always, take care, stay safe, and I hope you'll be back for future guitar building adventures.